I've been with my wife since around 2013 or 2014. Back then, I thought she was everything I'd ever wanted in a partner. I had just come out of a sexless marriage, feeling drained and disconnected from the idea of love. I was living it up as a single guy, freedom, no strings attached, just enjoying life. But when I met her, everything changed. It was like the world just stopped, and in that moment, I thought I had found the one. I fell head over heels for her, blinded by this deep infatuation. I let myself believe it was all my fault when things started going wrong. I didn't want to see the red flags, and I let her manipulate me into thinking that the problems in our relationship were my fault. I was active duty in the military at the time, and although I could feel something wasn't right deep down, I chose to ignore it. My heart told me one thing, but my mind was too clouded by love and the pressure of being a good husband to see it. The first real change came after our daughter was born in 2016. It was supposed to be a time of joy, but somehow it became the beginning of the end. For reasons I couldn't understand, she stopped wanting me to be as physically intimate with her. We had always had a great sex life before, having sex once a day, sometimes more. It was passionate, fun, and fulfilling. But after our daughter was born, she stopped wanting me to go down on her. I didn't make a big deal out of it at first, thinking it was just a phase, maybe due to the stress of being new parents. I pushed aside the growing sense that something was off, and just tried to enjoy what we had left. But even though the sex was still happening, it wasn't the same. The intimacy began to fade, and so did the connection between us. Soon enough, the arguments started. It would begin with a simple text from her while I was at work. If I didn't respond right away, or if I didn't answer the way she wanted, it became an issue. She would get upset and tell me she was tired of everything, that she didn't know how much longer she could live like this. She made it seem like I was the one causing the strain in our relationship. She accused me of being distant, of not communicating enough, even though we talked all the time. She blamed me for everything, and I believed her. Then, the real gut punch came. She told me she was falling out of love with me because I wouldn't go down on her anymore. The irony of it was that it wasn't even me who stopped. She had put a stop to it, but somehow, in her twisted logic, it became my fault. At the time, I was too deep in the relationship to see it clearly. Looking back, I can see how she started taking more girl trips, or me time trips. She would visit family to clear her head. I didn't think much of it at the time. We had just had a baby, moved to a new state, and she had started nursing school. So I told her, "Go ahead, take the time you need." I was just trying to be supportive, not realizing I was unknowingly giving her the space she needed to distance herself from me and, worse, start seeing someone else. After those trips started, everything changed. Our relationship went from bad to worse. One morning, she'd tell me how lucky she was to have me and how amazing I was as her husband. We'd have sex, and it felt like things were okay, at least, that's what I convinced myself. By lunchtime, she'd be mad at me for not making enough money with my military pay. Then, by dinner, everything would go back to normal, and we'd have sex again. I'd go to bed exhausted but satisfied, thinking everything was okay. Meanwhile, she'd stay up late, saying she was doing homework. What I didn't know was that she was texting other guys, sending them pictures, and getting emotionally invested in them. She'd get worked up, and then she'd wake me up for sex again, as if everything was fine. I didn't see it at the time, but I was so wrapped up in the physical aspect of our relationship that I missed all the warning signs. In 2017 and 2018, I found out that she had been cheating on me with her ex whenever she went back to Detroit. There were multiple trips, but one stands out more than the others. It was on my birthday weekend. She left me at home with our daughter and went to Detroit to sleep with her ex. I had no idea. That weekend still stinks. But it wasn't until December 2018 that everything finally hit me. She went to Detroit again, and the next day, she called me, professing her love for me, saying she was fully committed, that she was happy, and wanted to be my wife again. I knew something wasn't right, though. I pushed her to tell me the truth, but she refused to admit anything. She had slept with her ex, and the only reason she was acting so devoted to me now was because they had gotten caught, and he had chosen his wife over her. I didn't find that out until much later, when his wife told me the truth. At this point, I had caught her cheating multiple times. We talked about it, but she never owned up to her actions. Instead, she would say she was happy now and wanted to be my wife again, like it was that simple. But she was already married to me. The red flags were everywhere, but I was so manipulated into thinking it was all my fault that I couldn't see the truth. One of the biggest signs came when she convinced me to take orders overseas for the extra money. I agreed, thinking it was what was best for us. But when I came back, all I was met with were weekend hotel stays because she needed a break from the kids. Eventually, she admitted to sleeping with her ex once, but I could tell she was lying. My gut was screaming at me to leave her, to take the kids and get away from the toxic situation, but I couldn't hear my own instincts anymore. I had become too lost in the fog of denial. I came home after a year overseas, expecting some relief or sense of normalcy, but I was met with a stranger. My wife was distant, detached. The spark we once had was completely gone. Our sex life had turned into something that felt like a chore, something I wasn't excited about anymore. We barely had sex, maybe once or twice a month, but when we did, it wasn't fun. It felt like just going through the motions. Fast forward another year, and I'd been gone for 9 months out of the last 20 on deployments. My last deployment ever in the military. I was counting down the days until I could come home for good. But right before I came home, my wife started a petty fight with me. She wanted to argue, so I did. Then, 6 days later, after the fight, she announced we were separated. She had already moved her girlfriend into our brand new house, the one I had bought while deployed but hadn't even stepped foot in yet. She allowed that woman to sleep in my bed, have a key to my house, and worst of all, put my daughter to bed. It hit me like a ton of bricks the moment I walked off the plane. Everything was different. She didn't care about me anymore. She was openly cheating, and I couldn't escape it. I was crushed. All the doubts I'd ignored for years came crashing down in an instant. I had built this mental wall around myself, convincing myself that I was just imagining things. But now, it was all real, and it was too much. I was heartbroken, defeated. I couldn't hold back the tears. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely lost. After only a month of being home, I convinced myself that my kids would be better off without me. I felt like such a failure, a screw-up, and it took everything in me to fight the urge to just disappear. But then, something inside me snapped. I checked myself into a mental health facility, and that's where I met Shannon. She helped me see the truth about what had happened to me, that none of this was my fault. It wasn't me, it was her and her manipulation. I had my own part in it, but I wasn't the cause of it all. Shannon helped me find my way back to myself, to find the strength to keep going. Today, my wife and I are separated. I've retired from the military, I have the house, and I have the kids. And for the first time in years, I'm truly happy. I don't share the full story with anyone, mainly because I'm ashamed of what I let happen. But I also don't want to ruin my kids' view of their mom. Once I get my retirement money squared away, I'll be filing for divorce, and honestly, I couldn't be more relieved. Getting over codependency is a hell of a journey. I spent so long trying to fix things and please everyone else that I lost myself in the process. My biggest enemy wasn't her, it was me. Captain Fix-It. There's so much more to this story, but I think I've already said enough. The bottom line is, now that I've healed and moved on, she wants to work things out. She's pushing for therapy, but I told her it would just be me telling her how much of a piece of shit she is for an hour. And I still want to move forward with the divorce.